Are you losing potential new clients in your law firm because you had taken too long to respond to them? Are you struggling to grow your team because of an inefficient and complex internal tax system? Or are you missing out on additional profit margin because your team and yourself are drowning in admin tasks? All of these problems have one root cause: an inefficient and unstructured intake process. In this video, I'm gonna showcase the exact method that we follow with our clients to make sure that we solve for this root cause. A blueprint or a map of an intake process. With this blueprint, you'll gain clarity on what happens at each step of the customer journey. Importantly, what we sometimes see is that firm owners have one vision of the process in their heads, while their team is actually doing something different. Using this technique, you'll be able to get on the same page with your team. After that, as a firm owner, you'll be able to make decisions on what you want to optimize or automate in the process to make it more efficient. Blueprinting is a crucial step before making any business process changes or automating parts of your system. What we oftentimes see is that firms get distracted by new software and new tools and waste time by going in the wrong direction. Even worse, a lot of times it's the firm owner who is spending their time building out these changes. And the firm owner's time is the most valuable asset in any firm. Remember, the quality of answers that you get in this process will depend on the quality of the questions you ask yourself and your team. So make sure that you ask the right questions. Hi there, my name is Martin, and I'm a CTO at Swans, previously known as Automation for Lawyers. On a daily basis, we help law firms navigate this blueprinting process. One of the firms that we've been working with managed to scale from 4 people to more than 25 in just a year and a half by following the steps that I'm going to be outlining today. At the moment, we are working with a multitude of firms in different practice areas, including estate planning, probate, and immigration, to address these issues. As a law firm owner, I know that your time is valuable. That's why I created a worksheet for you to print out and go through together with your team that outlines all the key concepts and steps that I'm going to be describing in this video. The worksheet is completely free of charge, and you can access it by joining our legal community on school.com. Apart from getting access to all the past and future resources that we're going to be publishing, you'll also be able to interact and mingle with like-minded law firm owners that are growing their practices. Joining the community and downloading the worksheet will just take a few seconds, and you can find the link to do that either down below or in my profile. Let's now jump in and have a look at the 5 steps that comprise this blueprinting process. For the purpose of the demo, I'll be talking about an imaginary law firm that is practicing estate planning. They have 2 attorneys, Linda and Patricia, 1 paralegal, Jessica, and also a receptionist called Liam. The first step in the process is outlining the customer journey. It is comprised of a few points. First of all, we need to understand what are the different P&C, potential new client, sources and channels. Sources are where your P&Cs discover you. That could be, for example, by searching in Google, by a referral from a friend or a colleague, or by, for example, seeing your firm in an ad. The channels are the actual places where they contact you. So that could be, for example, a website form, them calling your firm, or them, for example, sending you an email. After that, we'll need to understand all the different staff actions that comprise the intake process and time spent on them. That could be things such as updating your CRM, customer relationship management system, sending out emails to P&Cs, or, for example, drafting engagement letters. Understanding how much time your team members spend on each one of those steps is crucial, because later on it will help us prioritize what we should be working on first. And lastly, we also need to understand what are the different P&C actions that they need to perform and what info are we collecting at each step. This, for example, could be the PNC filling out a form for you or signing an engagement letter. Let's now look at our demo imaginary firm and see what is their process. First of all, we have outlined 4 different sources where PNCs discover this firm. It is Google Ads, organic search or SEO, YouTube channel, and also referrals. In terms of how they actually get in contact with the firm, we have identified 4 channels. The website form, displayed on the homepage, another website form on the Contact Us page, inbound emails that they receive at their welcome at address, and finally the inbound phone calls. After that, we have outlined what information are we collecting from the PNC in each one of those locations. So for example, for the website form, we are collecting things such as the first name, last name, email, phone number, source, i.e. where they have discovered your firm, and also the spouse information. After that, we have outlined what steps are being performed either by the staff members or the PNC to progress the case. So for example, imagine that the website form is hosted on your WordPress site, and after the form submission, actually an email is received with that information to a team member's address. For the website form on the homepage, Liam receives that email, and for the Contact Us page, welcome at address is receiving that email with all the information. After that, there is some delay until an email is reviewed by a team member. So for example, Liam in this case, and Jessica, who is having a look, who is monitoring the welcome at inbox for the Contact Us page form. As well here, we have identified how long does it usually take for them to review that information, right? So let's say they usually take 2 hours to see that their new email came in and be able to act upon it. In case of an inbound email, the process is similar. Jessica is again monitoring the welcome at inbox. And after that, either Liam or Jessica are creating the PNC in this case, Lawmatics. Let's imagine that their CRM, created in Lawmatics manually, right? In here as well, we have outlined how much time is it taking them per each PNC to do this. So in this case, 2 minutes for each potential new client. In case of inbound phone call, the process is a bit simpler, right? Because it's more instant. In this case, just Liam is answering the phone and creating the PNC in Lawmatics. After that, Liam will be speaking with the PNC, either directly from the inbound phone call or actually calling the client, right? After having reviewed the email or the PNC that was created by Jessica. In here, by the way, you will see a few inefficiencies potentially already from the get-go. We'll identify those as we go along in the steps in the process. Liam is speaking with the PNC, and it usually takes about 15 minutes to get all the necessary information and to book them in for a consult with an attorney. The information that we collect here is some repeated information from before, such as the basic details, but then also the address, previous addresses, and also the preferred date and time of the consult. After that, Liam is looking up a free slot on Linda's or Patricia's calendar, dependent on the PNC preference and also the availability of each attorney, creating then the consult event in the attorney's calendar, setting up Zoom conferencing for the consult, and sending a confirmation email to PNC. In this case, he's not using templates, so he's just sending it freehand. Again, in each one of these steps, we have outlined how much time Liam spends on each one of these steps. In here, we have outlined just the first contact portion of the intake process. But as you can see, it can already comprise quite a lot of steps, especially if there are multiple channels that the PNC can contact your firm through, or if there is multiple conditionals, such as, for example, if you're not able to reach the client on the first try, do you send them an email? Do you try to follow up? It can get quite complex quite quickly. So that's why as well it is beneficial to be working with a consultant who has done this before to be able to guide you through this process. Okay, so after you have outlined the customer journey, right, pertaining to the intake process, so that could be, getting first in touch with the PNC, booking them in for the consult, running conflict checks, sending them the engagement letter, them signing it, and finally creating the case in your case management system. we will go to step number 2, which is finding opportunities to optimize. In this case, it's important to mention that steps 2 and the following step 3 are just around identification. We are not yet making any changes to the system. First of all, we need to get a full understanding of what is possible with our current process. In the opportunities to optimize, we are talking about making business process changes, which require minimal technical intervention. And here we categorize them in what we call the 3 S's: scrap, simplify, and standardize. Scrap means eliminating anything that is unnecessary. So for example, if you are collecting some information from the client which you are not using later on in the process, you should eliminate that. That simply wastes your P&C and your team members' time. Simplify means making sure that you don't duplicate work. So for example, if you've already collected some information from the client in a previous step, make sure that your team members don't ask the P&C the same question later on. That again simply worsens the P&C experience and makes it so that your team members are spending more time than is needed. And lastly, we have standardize, making sure that the process is the same for each P&C. This will mean, for example, creating templates for your team members to use when they're communicating with the client over email. Or making sure that if you have multiple forms on your website, that they actually congregate them in just one unique form with one unique channel of communication after that. So let's look at these 3 C's in the context of our example and see what we can improve on a business level. So for the first S, scrap, eliminating the unnecessary, let's imagine that Liam, when speaking with the P&C over the phone for the first time, collects previous addresses, right? But you don't really use that information later on in any of the steps. You don't really need that information for your process. So in this case, you should just simply remove that from the equation. As for simplify, let's imagine that on the website form, we are already asking the client about their spouse, or potential new clients about their spouse information. However, for some reason, the email that is received by the team member does not contain that information, or simply when the team members are filling out the information in Lawmatics, they forget to update that information on the contact. Here we can do multiple things. First of all, if team members are forgetting to include some important information, instead of having them create a P&C manually, we can create a form for them to fill out and making sure that they always fill out the required fields. For the second S, simplify, let's imagine that when the P&C fills out the website form, they already provide us with the spouse information. However, when the team members are filling out the P&C information in Lawmatics, they sometimes forget to include that information, which leads then to Liam having to ask for that information again during their first phone call with the P&C, which again simply worsens the P&C experience and wastes Liam's time. For the second S, simplify, let's imagine that in the website form, we are already asking the P&C about the spouse information. However, when the team members fill out the P&C in Lawmatics, considering that they're doing so manually, they forget sometimes to include that information, which means that Liam, during the call with the P&C, has to ask them again about that piece of data. That again simply worsens the P&C experience and wastes Liam's time. So there are a few things that we can do over here. First of all, we could, instead of having the team members create the Lawmatics P&C manually, we can enable a form for them to fill out, and we'll ensure that all the required fields are populated before the P&C can be created. What we could do in this case is build out a form for Liam and Jessica to use when filling out information about a new P&C, and make sure that they fill out all the required fields. That way, any information that we already get from the client on the website form will be populated in the system, and Liam won't have to ask that again later in the process. And lastly, for standardize, we actually can do a few things. So, as you may have noticed, right, we have 2 website forms, and they go to different email addresses. That is not great, right? We should really just have the same process for any website forms. So preferably, considering that Liam anyways will be speaking with the P&C, we could have both of these forms go to Liam's address, right? And have a unified process for both of them instead of having a more complex structure over here with Jessica also in the equation. What we could also do for the standardization is, instead of having Liam send out a PNC confirmation email freehand, we could enable a template for him to use to make sure, again, that all of our PNC communications are standardized and consistent for each PNC that contacts the firm. After we have identified all the opportunities for us to change up the business process, we can go on to finding opportunities for automation. And here we break them down again in 3 parts. We can either look at some of the features that we are not already using of our current software for which we are already paying for. A lot of times what we see is that firms don't take the full advantage of the tools that they already have access to. Second, we could look at automation platforms such as Make and Zapier. In our demo example, the firm is using Lomatics, which already provides quite a flexible automation tools. But for example, if we are using another platform such as, let's say, Clio Manage, it has less automation possibilities out of the box. And so here we can add on top an automation platform such as Make or Zapier to make sure that, let's say, when a case changes the stage, some automations are triggered. For example, sending out an automated email notification to the client or setting up an engagement letter to be e-signed. And lastly, we can also have a look at adding new software into the mix. This could either be an add-on for specific features that we are missing, such as, let's say, scheduling, or actually considering a migration onto another CRM, customer relationship management system. Migration is usually the last option that we consider with our clients because obviously it is more complex, but sometimes, especially if you're working with more legacy systems and not very open systems, that may be required if we really want to achieve all of our automation potential. Let's have a look at the demo example and see what we can do in terms of automation over here. Now, first of all, as you have noticed, right, once the website form is submitted, it just simply emails one of our internal email addresses instead of creating that PNC automatically in Lomatics. So we can change this because in Lomatics we can actually embed a form on the website. And so whenever a new form is submitted, it will automatically create the PNC in Lomatics with that information, also ensuring that there is no human errors when copy-pasting information from one place to another, and automatically create a task for Liam to follow up with that PNC. So here we'll be using the capabilities of the existing software that we are already using. And then in terms of calendaring, even so Lomatics does offer a calendaring solution, let's say the firms want a bit more flexibility and they decide to go for Calendly. Right? With Calendly, we'll be able to replace pretty much all of these 4 steps over here with just one. Liam will be able to look up a free slot on the calendar that will be joined in between Linda and Patricia, or separated depending on how the firm wants to set it up. And as soon as Liam books that slot, it will automatically create an event in the attorney's calendar, set up Zoom conferencing, and also send the PNC a confirmation email with the date and time of the appointment and also the Zoom link. Right? Eliminating the need for these 3 steps over here, which previously were manual, and thus saving us time. As I mentioned before, the steps 2 and 3 were purely for identification purposes. We are not yet actually implementing anything into the system. And that's really where step 4 comes in, identifying bottlenecks and prioritizing the initiatives. In here, we need to understand what are the goals that we are trying to achieve with this process. And these are threefold. It is to improve the PNC experience and thus increase the conversion rate, to streamline the internal system so we can grow faster and onboard new employees into our company with more ease, and finally reducing admin work of our team to make sure that we increase our profit margins. For each one of these goals, we can then look at the initiatives that we have identified in steps 2 and 3 and put a monetary value on them. For example, in improving the PNC experience, we can then look at these 3 goals, and for each one of the initiatives that we have outlined in steps 2 and 3, put some kind of figure on top of it, either more qualitative or more quantitative in each one of these goals. So for example, for the improving the PNC experience, we can assess based on industry benchmarks or the experience of our colleagues, how much the conversion rate do we expect to increase if, for example, we send PNC's automated email notifications or an automated email drip sequence as soon as they contact the firm. For streamlined internal system, we can have a look at how many SOPs or standard operating procedures our firm has and how easy it is for the team members to follow them. And based on their feedback, understand that if we streamline it, how much easier will it actually be to onboard a new person onto the team. And finally, reducing admin work. That is probably the easiest one to quantify, because as I remember in step 1, we have identified how much time are our employees spending on each one of the actions. And here we can simply multiply that number by the volume of the P&Cs that the firm is processing per week or per month, and multiply it by the hourly rate of the staff members performing these actions to get a figure of how much savings we're going to get from automating or eliminating some of these steps. Once we actually understand how much benefit are we going to get from each one of these initiatives, we can prioritize them and plan out the development. Step 5 is simply executing and actually putting both the business process changes and any software development that is required into action. Now, before closing off this video, let me give you a few additional tips as you go throughout this process. Probably the most important one is making sure that you get all of your team's input, obviously of the team members that are participating, in this case, in the intake process. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, a lot of times firm owners have one vision of the process in their heads, while the team members are actually doing something different. That's why it's important to sit down with everyone. We love to do it with a whiteboard. It could be either a physical whiteboard in your office or a virtual one, such as the one I'm using right now in Whimsical or Miro, and outline all of the actions that are performed by the team members and get their input on what are they doing, if it's working or not. Then make use of AI tools such as ChatGPT and Claude. They are amazing to brainstorm some ideas. You can outline the process you currently have and ask Claude and ChatGPT to suggest improvements to the process. Or, for example, if you want to draft email templates, again, this is a great tool to use. Simply explain a bit the context, and the AI tool will be able to draft quite a nice email template for you to implement into your system. They're also great at summarization. So what you can even do is you could record the meeting that you have with your team about this, transcribe it, put it into ChatGPT or Claude, and ask it to give you a summary of the key takeaways and the process that's currently being followed. Again, these tools are an amazing time saver. And lastly, make sure to iterate and review regularly this process. As you are growing your firm, things will change. You're going to add new team members, you're going to change up the delegation of different tasks. And so, depending on your rate of growth, it is important to review this every 3 or 6 months to make sure that your process is still optimized and is working with all the new changes that you are implementing. As I mentioned at the start of the video, you can get the worksheet that outlines all the steps covered in this video, which you can go through together with your team by joining our legal community on school.com. You can do this with the link down below or in my profile. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have found this content valuable. Subscribe and like the video to see more. Thank you.